Okay, welcome everyone. Today we are going to continue our Confucius Analects, and today we will start from book 19. Okay, total have a book 20 books, so we have a book 19. Book 19 has, I think we have how many chapter? It's a little bit long, has 20, I think to 25 chapter in book 19, but each one is very short. Basic is only like one sentence. So we probably can finish in one section or two section or three section. I think it's on book 19. And the book 20 has only 3 chapters. So we should be able to finish one. And the different thing of, before we start book 19, something to mention. Book 19 is very different from the other 19 books because there's no Confucius, no master say. So we can say this account is recorded way long, many years after the death of Confucius, because they have the 5 disciples speaking in this book, and the order is Zhang, Zhang, Zhiyu, Zheng, and Zhigong. Okay, 5 disciples. And these 5 disciples are very young. They are about, I would say they are much younger than Confucius, at least 40 years younger than Confucius. So we will see during this time, all these 5 disciples become the head of their own school, Confucian branch of school. So they have their own teaching, and then they have the difference among them. So sometimes they criticize each other, and then we will see that's the different flavor. They kind of review what Confucius has taught, and then they have their own interpretation, and they have their own practice. So that's the book 19, and let's follow our format. So we will read 2 or 1 or 2 any translation you like, and after that, Amang and I will share our work on the translation. Then we have a brief discussion, and we will move on. So let's start from book 19, chapter 1. Okay. So anyone want to read the translation, and then can raise your hand. Otherwise, I believe Kwang will be happy to to read chapter 1 from Dr. Eno, right?
Yes. Okay,
Please.
so 19.1 by Professor Robert Eno. Zhang said, a gentleman may be deemed satisfactory if he fulfills his orders in the face of mortal danger, bears righteousness in mind when faced with opportunities for gain, bears respect in mind when at sacrifice, and bears grief in mind when at mourning.
Thank you, Kwang. Anyone want to read your version?
I can read Leggy.
Okay, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Zhang said, the scholar trained for public duty, seeing threatening danger, is prepared to sacrifice his life. When the opportunity of gain is presented to him, he thinks of righteousness. In sacrificing, his thoughts are reverential. In mourning, his thoughts are about the grief which he should feel. Such a man commands our approbation indeed.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's share my screen. Okay. I hope it's big enough. So, okay, Amang, can you read
All right.
chapter 1?
Yes. Book 19, Chapter 1. Zhang said, a learned man, seeing danger, receives it as mundane. He is conscious of righteousness in seeing an opportunity to gain, conscious of reverence in offering sacrifices, and conscious of grief in attending funerals. That's all he needs to do.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so here, I think this one is, we can say that Zhang's main teaching, a learned man seeing danger, receive it as mundane. Okay, 致命, okay, Confucius man, yeah. And both we translate as mundane and receive as an order. And Dr. Eno translates receive an order. And the Negi translate as sacrifice your life. And I kind of disagree because again, it's not. It's a lot of people even today read the first line as a learned man seeing danger should be ready to sacrifice his life. Okay, uh, uh, even in today the Chinese society, a lot of people read this way. But I don't think that's what Zhang is talking about, because Ming here means mandate. Mandate means order. Okay, your responsibility doesn't mean your life. Okay, so I think that's important. But of course, if your mandate, your order, your job is as a general, then you have to sacrifice your life in some dangerous situation. That's true, but it not necessarily means sacrifice your life. Second thing I like to mention is this one is kind of continue from book 16, chapter 10. It's the go book 16, chapter 10. Okay. If you remember, okay, here Confucius said those who are no, chapter 10, right? There's a nine thing, conscious of nine thing, right? Talking about in seeing, he's conscious of enlightenment. In listening, he's conscious of intelligence. About to the last one, Confucius talk about in anger, in decisions. Okay, in seeing opportunity to gain, he is conscious of rightness. So Zhang kind of continue from chapter 10 of book 16, talking about start from seeing danger, receive as its mandate, is conscious of rightness in seeing an opportunity to get. Then going on to conscious of reverence in offering sacrifice, and the conscious of grief in attending funeral. Okay, so kind of like continue from Confucius teaching about conscious of nine things, and that he just make it more, I would say, more practical. Okay, that's Zhang's argument here. So stop here, and Amang, please.
Thank you. Yeah, Jason was saying that this book reads a little different because everything is about Confucius' students and not so much directly about him, but it makes for a fitting end because what you have in book 19 is his students making reiterations of all the lessons they have learned from Confucius. And the lessons Zhang is putting forward here are those lessons that Jason pointed to in book 16, chapter 10. But if you really look at what he's saying, a learned man, sure, when seeing danger, receives it as mundane. So by simply elevating oneself from the status of a small man or shaoren to a sure, you can encounter perilous things and just take it as in stride. He's also conscious of righteousness, also consciousness of reverence, also conscious of grief. These are innate, or I guess we could think of them as internal machinations surrounding activities. Just, well, if you go all the way back to book 3, what you have is Confucius lambasting the Ji family for performing things like making sacrifices or attending funerals or looking for opportunities for gain. And deriding the fact that they are doing it sheerly out of self-interest and not with any real character or quality. And they would deign to call themselves jinsa, especially those who were in charge. Here, Zhang is, I guess you could think of it as one rung down from a jinsa, talking about a shi, but he's talking about a shi in terms of qualities that Confucius would espouse were necessary for people to own the title jinsa. And I think that's some of the self-effacement going on as well. Zhang would not consider himself a jinsa. The master never came out and said, "You are a jinsa." So he can refer to himself as a shi. And there he goes. Gone. Sorry. Had to send in the report. He can't refer to himself as a jinsa. He can legitimately refer to himself as a shi. And so here he is talking about him as a shi. What should he do? Again, reiteration is throughout the Analects, but here we get to see it from sort of the next generation owning and interpreting all the lessons they took from at the master's knee.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so let's have a brief discussion on this chapter. Okay, Kwang, please.
My comment wouldn't be unusually short. It is interesting that book 19 starts with by stressing the importance of being, okay? Because in everything that Zhang said, it's about the being and not information or know-how. Because once again, the center of Confucianism is haosui, eager to learn or loving to learn. And once again, there are three domains of learning: information, know-how, and being. And this book starts in a very interesting manner by stressing only the dimension of being and learning. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Mark, please.
I'm wondering how exhaustive this list of 4 things is supposed to be. You end up translating the end by, this is all you have to do. In the first 2 instances, it might not always be clear whether the same circumstances present a danger or an opportunity for gain. It could be the same, depending on how you react, depending on what you say. So you might have to act mundanely and righteously at the same time until it unfolds what situation you're actually in, perhaps.
Thank you, Mark. And Kwang, you have.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I promised to myself to be not too long, but I cannot resist to add something to what Mark just said, because that is precisely, I would say, the other thing at the center of Confucianism. You are invited to be wise, of course, to abide in beauty, goodness, and truth. And I would like to mention that if you read the 4th stuff, it goes into justice, valor, and humanity, and wisdom, okay? Justice, of course, is to bear righteousness in mind. Valor, of course, is about fulfilling his orders in the face of mortal danger. Humanity is to bear grief in mind when at mourning, and respect in mind when a sacrifice is about truth. So those are the four cardinal virtues manifesting in time, corresponding to the three timeless form of Yi Ran Tao, beauty, goodness, and truth. So that introduction being said, I want to say too that at the center of Confucianism, you are invited to be wise, of course, the upper trigram, beauty, goodness, and truth. But you are also invited not to be a clumsy nerd and to act with skills when it's needed, but center in the upper trigram, center in infinite awareness. So you are invited to be wise, but you are also invited to be streetwise. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Any other comment, question on this? So one thing I'd like to mention is about the person of the Zhang. If you, I forget what chapter, previous, Confucius had comment about Zhang. Okay, he said Zhang is over. Okay, that means more aggressive. Compared to Zixia, he calls not enough. So in another way, my interpretation would be a little bit too conservative. So I'd like to you put this one in your mind, because today we were going to do three chapters about Zhang. Then we will move to Zixia. So this two person is very good comparison. Okay, both are good person. Good. We can consider both of them are expert, okay, but they have a different interpretation and their personality. Zhang is over, Confucius said, aggressive, okay, progressive. That's the right word. And the Zixia is conservative, too conservative, not enough. Okay, so just put this one in mind, and let's move on. Chapter 2 of book 19. Kwang, if you.
Okay, translation by Professor Robert Eno, 19.2. Zhu Chang said, if a man's grasp on virtue is not broad in practice, and his faithfulness to the Tao not profound, then his presence or absence in the world counts for nothing.
Thank you, Kwang. Mark, you want to read Leggy?
James Leggy,
Yes, please.
Chapter 2, Book 19. Zhang said, when a man holds fast to virtue, but without seeking to enlarge it, and believes in right principles, but without firm sincerity, what account can be made of his existence or non-existence?
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to the translation we have. Chapter 2, Among, please.
Book 19, Chapter 2. Zhang said, holding on to virtue, but not enhancing it, believing in the Tao, but not sincerely. Can we say he possesses them, virtue and Tao? Can we say he doesn't possess them?
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so first, Kwang just mentioned about being. So this one is talking about being. So basics. If you only have the virtue without enhances, if you only believe Tao but not sincere, what's the difference of your being? So that means possessing them. Okay, can you say you possessing? Okay, you can translate as you own it or you being it. Okay, so I think that's a different way to interpretation, but that means you have virtue and the Tao and the De. Remember, we are going to another Taoist, Dao De Jing. Let's talk about Tao and the De virtue. Okay, so here, same thing, two important things, virtue and the Tao. Okay, so that's the two things, and that's Zhang is talking about. Another thing I'd like to mention is just like Confucius comment. Zhang is a little bit too over. Okay, we say over is aggressive. Okay, progressive. Okay, so you can see he is not just satisfied with you are holding the virtue or you just believe in the Tao. That's not enough. His personality is going more extended. So if you have virtue, you need to enhance it. If you believe in Tao, you need truly believe sincerely. Okay, believe it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense according to Zhang. So that's it. And Amang, please.
Thank you. And to reiterate what Jason said a little bit before this about Zhang and Zisha, it's easy when we put out a term like conservative to think of the other as progressive, but it might be even easier to say Zhang has a tendency to overdo. He's very proactive or very assertive, whereas Zhang has a tendency to underdo. And by that meaning of conservative, he's very play it safe. These were the characteristics these two had under the master's tutelage. Now we're seeing them as developed out in the world, acting as master themselves. And so when he says holding on to virtue but not enhancing it, okay, resting on your laurels, but then doing nothing to improve yourself beyond that, that's not okay, according to Confucius. Believing in the Tao a right way, but being a little tongue-in-cheek about it or not fully committed to that it could really be the right way for all people. That's not the qualities we're looking for. Can we say that a person possesses virtue and Tao then? Or conversely, can we say that they don't possess them? Or maybe they do, but they're not fully realized yet. This is him reflecting on his own tutelage. Him being told, I didn't cultivate my virtue, my character enough when I first met Master Kong. And I learned that I needed to not just be, hey, I'm a good guy. No, I had to continue to work at it. I did believe in his vision of a right way, but I always was a little cynical about it. But do I feel like I didn't possess an understanding or encapsulating these qualities that the master held so dear? It's a rhetorical question. It's a self-reflective question, but it's also a question to the listener who he's addressing to make the same self-examination that he was asked to make. And this is somebody who would rush forward. I want to go out and get a job. I've done enough. I got a C. C's get degrees. Send me on to employment. And the master kept holding him back. And so he had to do some serious self-reflection before he was ready to take on this role of speaking from the master's lessons. I really like this chapter because that sort of self-reflection, although it's not explicit, it feels very implied from how he lays it out with a rhetorical have not sort of finale.
Thank you, Amang. Okay, so let's have a brief discussion and on this chapter, chapter 2, please. Okay, Kwang, please.
Okay, so once again, it's about being, since it's about to have a grasp on virtue which is brought in practice and to have a faithfulness to the Tao which is profound, to be of consequence in the world. Here, I would say that I would like to make a small historical note. Okay, you all notice that the name of those guys end by Zi or start by Zi. Okay, it's not the fact that they are philosopher, because Zi once again means master, and it's the fact that they were all members of the nobility, either the small gentry or the high aristocracy. So, and we can see that those men are always obsessed by letting their names known to the world, okay? Because yes, there is a component of the high quality of the upper trigram, but at the same time, there is also a desire to bring honor and glory to their lineage. So in the Chinese mind, one doesn't prevent the other. It is not mutually exclusive. You can have the desire to bring honor and glory to your lineage, but you are also invited to do so in an honorable manner. So I just want to stress that historical social dimension. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. For the Mark, please.
Thanks, Jason. I'm wondering what the group thinks it means to enlarge day. Does it mean, that day is not predetermined, it's not preformed, it's a living thing, so we can enlarge on it? I'm wondering how people are interpreting that.
I want to jump right
agree
on
with
this.
you. Okay, so Mark, thank you. And Amam,
Yeah, I want to jump right on this because Mark asked a good question. And I think Confucius answers it clearly. The infamous chapter that in his 30s, in his 40s, 50s, 60s, ultimately being able to follow his heart's desire, all of those speak to his heart's desire, his virtue, or his was finally aligned near the end of his life in his 70s. And so all the time preceding it was time grooming it. And and therefore, no, it's not fully realized when you come out the chute. That was actually his argument against the jinsa of established norm, that they were being simply born into this privileged position and believed themselves to have superior virtue or superior because of that inherited position. And he saw firsthand a person of lowly beginnings could lift themselves up, could refine that character, but only through work. It was only to be done by working hard, studying, learning, constantly applying oneself, constant polishing and grinding, as he would say, to enhance that. I'm sure he would recognize that there were variations in terms of a person could be born with poor da, or a person could be born with quite good da. But whether or not that's what you start off with does not determine where you wind up. And I would say to his mind, by the time you reached adulthood, which we have to remember for the time and place was about 14, your actions had done more to determine your than your sort of inherited stock from the get-go. I would say other schools disagreed with him, but in terms of Confucianism, he was pretty explicit. You can enhance this by virtue of you working hard at it.
Thank you, Amam. Kwang, or anyone
Yes.
have want to respond to Mark's question? That's great. There's no right answer, wrong answer. That's your opinion. Kwang, please.
Yes, I would like to add another historical note, but in link with the idea that it's not enough to be born, okay? Because if there's something in Confucianism which is central and is absolutely related to Hao Shui, loving to learn or eager to learn, is the fundamental idea is that it's not enough to be born. Of course, the people who appear in the Analects, most of them were born, okay, once again, either in the gentry or the high aristocracy. But they have been brainwashed since their childhood that it's not enough to be born, and it's even before Confucius. Because let's not forget that Confucius simply crystallized and systematized the education that has been created by the Qi royal house, aka the Zhou dynasty, having ruled China from 1046 BCE to 256, but truly king from 1046 to 770 BCE, so the first 300 years of their existence. Confucius truly crystallized that idea that it's not enough to be born. And the second thing that Confucius brought to China is that in the first part of the Zhou dynasty, the idea that it's not enough to be born was the prime idea. But with Confucius, there was a second idea that has been added and having as much power than the first idea, is that the peasants who were considered as animals, because once again, I want to remind everyone that the hexagram is a schematic representation of the mind. The first three lines of the lower trigram is for sense perception, intellect, and emotional control, or I often say social sophistication, but I think that emotional balance is better because it's much clearer than social sophistication. So that is the part of the animal. So the second idea that Confucius brought to the Zhou world is that it's not enough to be born first, and second, some of the so-called animals can become gentlemen even if they were not born. And that was a very powerful idea that still has an impact even nowadays in 2024. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Nick, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just want to comment on Mark's question. So this translated and large. Earlier in book 8, chapter, I think it's chapter, one of the chapter, Leggy translated as broad. So this Hong, this word Hong, originally it means the sound from opening the arch. You know, when in the old days when the armies fight, they fight with the arches. So and when you shoot the arrow, you open it. There's a sound with it, which makes a big noise, and it dissipates in the air. So in that sense, that's the original meaning of this word. But I think in the context of this chapter, I would interpret it as something to manifest. So there is the idea of de, or the concept, the idea of de, and in the daily life, if somebody doesn't manifest that de, so it's not the criticism on somebody who doesn't further develop the philosophical content of the or conceptual comprehensiveness of the, but rather somebody who is a hypocrite in extreme. So it doesn't really manifest in the daily behavior, in the ordinary behavior of the concept of de, and that is the guy to be despised of, according to Zhang. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Any other comment? Or thank you, Mark.
I
for
just wanted to say something about what Nick just said because I really appreciated it. And it's one of the qualities of the Chinese language that I love. Often, Chinese words are onomatopoeic. They are meant to sound like what they are trying to invoke. And he's correct. I dropped the etymology into the chat. Hong is the sound of hong, drawing and releasing a bow. But that is a great or a monumentous thing, especially if you were to hear it from 100 bows on the battlefield all simultaneously releasing. It would make a great or an emphatic noise. And so, yeah, I just had to echo what Nick was saying, that that onomatopoeic quality of Chinese language is something that is lost in translation, and it's good to bring it out every once in a while.
Thank you, Amam. And one thing I know, Confucius doesn't want, or Zhang said you should not do, is keep the virtue, the goodness in yourself and not doing anything. Just make yourself good. That's not enough. Mark, please.
Oh, great to hear from everybody and all these ideas about this. And based on what Nick said about the pulling of the bow, increasing the tension to the maximum that you can, that helps me to understand somewhat how we can not only manifest our de, but sort of draw it to its fullest power.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Kwang, please.
I would like to say that here I'm surprised that I did not see it at once, but sometimes I must be disturbed by the mooncake. That being said, if a man grasps on virtue is not brought in practice, okay, in practice, I make the hypothesis is that's about the lower trigram, okay, meaning are you broad? Are you including as many people as possible in your interactions? And his faithfulness to the Tao not profound, meaning are you truly rooted in the infinite awareness? And that is more about the upper trigram. And here, I think that there's a dialectics between precisely your rootedness into infinite awareness, the upper trigram, and your capacity to extend it or to express it, to enlarge it within the time dimension, meaning the phenomenal world, okay? Because Tao is the way, the infinite awareness, and Te is the virtues. I prefer to say the powers making you capable to act in time reality. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. So let's move on for chapter 3, book 19. Kwang,
okay. So 19.3 by Professor Robert Eno. A disciple of Zhi Xia asked Zhi Zhang about social interaction. Zhi Zhang said, "What does Zhi Xia say?" Zhi Xia says, "Interact with those who are satisfactory, spurn those who are not." Zhi Zhang said, "This differs from what I have heard. The Junzi honors the worthy and is tolerant to the ordinary multitude. He praises the good and takes pity on those who are not able to be. If I'm worthy, of whom can I not be tolerant? If I am unworthy, others would spurn me. How would I be able to spurn others?
Thank you, Kwang. Does Mark want to read the Leggy?
Okay, Leggy, Book 19, Chapter 3. The disciples of Zixia asked Zhang about the principles that could characterize mutual intercourse. Zhang asked, "What does Zixia say on the subject?" They replied, "Zixia says, associate with those who can advantage you. Put away from you those who cannot do so." Zhang observed, "This is different from what I have learned. The superior man honors the talented and virtuous and bears with all. He praises the good and pities the incompetent. Am I possessed of great talents and virtues? Who is there among men whom I will not bear with? Am I devoid of talents and virtues? Men will put me away from them. What have we to do with the putting away of others?
Thank you, Mark. Chapter 3.
Book 19, Chapter 3. The disciples of Zixia asked Zhang about social interactions. Zhang said, "What does Zixia say?" They replied, "Zixia said, be together with those who are permissible and reject those who are impermissible." Zhang said, "This is different from what I have heard from the master. A junzi venerates the worthy but tolerates everyone. He praises the good and pities the incapable. If I am very worthy, who will not tolerate me? If I am not worthy, who will reject me? How can I reject them?"
Thank you, Amam. I think here is the comparing note, right, between Zixia and Zhang. And as I mentioned in the early chapter, Confucius already commented Zhang is a little bit over, too much, okay, close the line, and Zixia is a little bit not enough, okay, too should I say conservative or too careful, okay, not cross the boundary. And so here you can see they are talking about social interaction, 教, and Zhang, but Zixia will say, how Zixia teach, how did Zixia teach his disciple, is talking about being with the worthy one, but not being with the bad one. Let's put this one. Now, choose your friend. Okay, that's Confucius talking about. You have a friend. You don't be friend. Don't be interact with inferior. I mean, moral inferior person. That's Zixia's interpretation. But Zhang, as we know, he is go over, more aggressive. Okay, so he will say, yeah, if we should be interact with the good people, the worthy people, but we also tolerant for the incapable people. Okay, that's Zhang's interpretation. And his reason is, if I'm worthy, everybody will like me. If I'm not worthy, people don't like me. So that's not our choice. Our choice is whether or not I should tolerate with incapable people. His answer is yes, you should do it. Okay, I think that's the way. And this one also brings to another Confucius comment on Zixia. Okay, Zixia, I think in book 6, Confucius is talking about the scholar of junzi, and the scholar of small men. Okay, so 君子如 and 小人如 okay scholar okay so he kind of warned 子夏 don't become a 小人 a small man okay so because 子夏 has a tendency of carefulness and not doing enough okay so I think here I'm not going to comment who is good or who is better, but basically you can see these two opposite personality of these two disciples. Okay, Amang, please.
Always be careful when you let a guest lecturer into your classroom. And I really do like this chapter because it's kind of that you know, the new shiny thing is in front of Zisha's disciples, and they're like, so they want to ask him questions, and his response, which is very telling, is to first ask, what does Zisha say? And they tell him. And he doesn't say he's wrong. He just says, I have heard it different. But it is in those differences that the differences of character are very telling. Because why would the master take Zisha aside and say, you got to get better friends? You really need to just be discretionary about who you're spending time with because you're meek. This is part of that. Conservative is the right word. I just wanted to get ahead of modernizing that term or putting it into the wrong connotation. But his meek conservative nature is going to have him fall in easily with people who flatter him, who are the wrong people. And so he needs to get discerning judgment, not just based on whether or not somebody's nice to him, but whether or not somebody's actually got character. Zhejiang, on the other hand, was the kid bullying the other kids in the schoolhouse. And the master took him aside and said, you got to learn to accept that some people are less capable. You've got to be more tolerant and more generous with the people around you, or you're going to alienate people. These two needed different lessons for different reasons. But the thrust of the lesson is the same, that discretion, judgment, and character count paramountly in social interactions. And that is both your own character and judgment, as well as those that you are interacting with socially. I really do appreciate this because I could just see these two after class having it out. Why did you tell my students I lied to them? I didn't say you lied. I said I heard it different. You're calling me a liar. Yeah, this probably got a little heated before they settled down, had some mooncake, and raised the glass to the old master.
Thank you, Mom. So let's have a brief discussion, and then that's the last chance to talk about Zhang. Okay, so then after this, we're going to move to Zixia. So we have Paul followed by Kwang. Paul, please.
Yeah, it's a question about, can you put your translation up quickly again? Just a short question.
Yeah, please.
Junzi venerates the worthy but tolerates everyone. He praises the good and pities the incapable. My question is, he doesn't pity the unworthy, which would be the opposite.
Okay.
So I'm just curious about that.
加善而今不尊贤而 Okay, I do the words first. I will say I do the word to words translation. The Chinese words 尊贤 okay, and means 贤 I usually translate as worthy, okay, 而容众 tolerant, okay. So actually, I thank you very much, Paul. I probably insert my word here. Should be, let me see. 君子 venerate the worthy but tolerate everyone. Okay, so that's correct. He praised the good and pity the incapable. That's the second sentence. praise 加善 the worthy, but Jin here interpret as tolerance or pity. 不能 means incapable, cannot do it. Okay, so first I just defend myself. I follow the text. Okay, then second level is, does the text correct or not? Right, that's another thing. So here, one way I can interpret incapable to be good. Okay, that could be that mean. Okay, so unable to be good, 不能, right? So probably doesn't mean your talent is not enough or your skill is not enough. Probably means you are not able to be good. I think that probably, so I probably can rework the word to make it more consistent, because 不能, I can, just like English, you say incapable, they have the two meaning. One is you don't have enough talent to do something, or you are not doing something. That's the two meaning on it. So I think I should think about this one and to make some adjustment that will become better. So thank you very much, Paul, for this comment. Kwang, please.
Before going to my comment, I think that to translate 不能 by incapable is quite good in my mind.
Okay.
So it's a short comment on that. That being said, what I want to say here, that my understanding of Zhang is that he is the guy who is more generous, because Xia, because he is more willing to interact with all kind of people. And Xia, if you know a little bit his pedigree, both are noblemen, but Xia is a much higher nobleman, because first Xia is his aristocratic name, okay, Zi, master, but his family name is Pu, okay, Pu Shang. Mm-hmm. And a Pu means to divine or divination, okay. He comes from a very old family of a court advisor, okay, making a divination in link with the I Ching. So it means that his pedigree goes back to the Shang dynasty, okay. So at the time of Confucius, his family was at least 1,000 years old. So I make the suggestion that the fact that Xia suggests that interact with those who are satisfactory, spurn those who are not, I think that he has been influenced enough by Confucius to have opened his heart and capable to receive advanced people, epistemologically speaking, but from humble background. But I think that Zhang was more generous in the sense that he would be willing to accept those from humble background who were not so brilliant. But for Xia, if you were not born, at least you have to compensate by being extremely brilliant. Okay, I cannot prove it, but from, let's say, circumstantial evidence, I suggest that interpretation. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Yes, yeah, it remind me, yes, and please keep in mind, Zhang Zixia has a higher bone, okay, than Zhang. Let's put this way, okay. So it's interesting to watch, okay, what his attitude, Zixia, and for the following few, I believe for the rest of the day, we are going to deal with Zixia, okay, and Zhang. This one is the last one about Zhang, and I agree with you. Zhang is more generous. Okay, he's willing to, deal with any kind of people. Nick, please.
Yeah, I want to make a comment and then a follow up to Paul's question. The comment is clearly there are two schools of thought. one guy would advocate the kind of communal communication that leads to the echo chamber in the contemporary sense. And the other is theoretically more appealing, but it's more challenging to implement. So therefore, some historical facts to validate this is interesting, because historically, factually, Zixia, the guy who advocated echo chamber kind of communal communication, was much more successful politically. He became eventually a teacher of one of the lord, and some of his pupils end up being powerful ministers. Had a lot of political success in implementing his ideas. So I can see how politically the way to associate your peers or your followers can become a social force, and therefore advance your own agenda in that sense. While Zixia talks about the ideas that intellectually and virtually morally appealing, but it doesn't have much political actual success in the time now. So therefore, the Zixia, the guy who was much more successful politically, had a very influential saying, which even influenced thousands of years of Chinese culture, which is to say that you should learn, to be good, to be competent, and then to serve your country in the government. So he basically pictured or described a career path for educated elite, which has been accepted, for thousands of years. Even today, I would say. Even you ask college graduates, they would say, "Oh yeah, if I could get into government, that would be my first choice." So this is very different kind of mindset. So that's one broad comment on the direction of this passage. And the second small question, I would nitpick with you, Jason Armand's translation, and this relates to Paul's question on this keyword pity. So if you don't mind, put your translation on the
Thank
screen.
you for questioning me this. Yeah, actually, that's
well,
important.
let me explain why I raise this question. Not to say anything wrong with it. You and Leggy agree. Both translate this word "jin" as pity. Now, actually, my question to those on the panel who speak the English as a mother tongue, what would you? How do you feel when somebody pity you? Is the sense neutral or derogative? In Chinese, it's a derogative. If you pity somebody, the ones being pitied takes that as a big insult. And some would even go to the extreme. And the stories survive the recorded history. So to be pitied is something that is not treated favorably. Therefore, some other translators actually translate "jin" as compassionate. So if you're compassionate toward others, that is acceptable, because the others, the ones being compassionate with, though being respected, even though they are in a weaker position. They don't want to be pitied, but they might accept the compassion. So therefore, we come back to this word, "jin." The original meaning of "jin" in Chinese is a kind of a weapon that doesn't kill. You cannot use it as a weapon to kill, but you still use it. Why? In ceremony, in the diplomatic protocol. That's why, even today, if a French president goes to see, I don't know, a Canadian, head of state, they would have those, soldiers holding the rifle, but those rifles do not kill, but they are there to show the respect. But in a sense, that's dangerous. So this jin survives that connotation. The jin is that kind of instrument to be used in the important ceremony, but doesn't kill. Therefore, it has the meaning of a different alternative. So therefore, if you feel compassionate for somebody who is different from you, who is weaker than you, that is acceptable.
Thank you very much, Nick. I would say I totally agree with you. And I've been struggling with this word translation. When I work on this one, it's a difficult. I think you explained very well. And I agree with you. PT is not a good word choice. And compassion, sympathy, tolerance. I think the tolerance is also another one. But actually, I just would say 100% I agree with you, but I'm looking for better suggestions.
I want to address it because Nick was talking about the word choice, and I agree that pity has a very belittling sort of connotation in the English language. When you talk about, oh, I pity somebody, it can sound very demeaning, but there's almost, and I almost suggested the word sympathize instead of pity, because it has just a little softer edge, but it still indicates something from a position of elevation. But I think in historical context, that is accurate, because pity was something that the jinsa of old would have over the peasantry animals when they weren't doing things right. Here, he's turning that on his ear and saying, even these so-called capable born jinsa, you should pity them if they are incapable, if they can't elevate themselves. And so, even though there's a little sneer to it, I think it's a valid sneer. I dropped the etymology of the word jin into the chat because I also liked what you were saying about the connotation of that word mao, or lance. It is meant to be something that is unwieldy, therefore not really used in battle. It's almost like the Swiss guard in front of the Vatican holding halberds. They're not probably going to defend the Pope with those halberds, but it's a symbol of station and a symbol of what's going on there. So I just had to add that 2 cents too. I do think there's a sneer to it. I think that is contextually appropriate for the time and place, but that was my take.
Thank you, Amam. My own struggle is this one, because this word has been appeared a few times in Confucius Analects, also appears in Dao De Jing, and every time I translate as vainglory. Okay, you are too proud. It's a negative word, but here is not negative. Okay, so that's the challenge I'm facing. And Nick explained very well. That's just kind of weapon, but doesn't kill. Okay, so just show you. So in a way, you feel it's vainglory. Okay, you too proud on that. If you talk about this guy, it's Jin. That means you can imagine the Swiss guard in front of Pope. All right, so they are proud. Okay, but in a way, they are on the other side of people. You assume if I see the Pope and in front of Swiss guard, I feel he's above me, but is he sympathize me, or I don't know. I just have to find the right word. That's the challenge here. But anyway, okay. Thank you very much for all kind of suggestion and point out the thing. But I know that we cannot find a perfect solution, but over the time, we will figure out. Huang, hope you have a better solution.
I don't know. I don't have a better solution because I suffer from the same presentism like everyone, okay? In the sense that we tend to see with our contemporary eyes of 2024 what happened 25 centuries ago. And I also prefer to sympathize rather than to pity. But I would like to end with the following stuff. For an aristocrat of Confucius' time to pity a peasant, the peasant would be absolutely grateful to be pitied by the aristocrat because it might be the difference between to be beaten up or simply to be chided. So I am absolutely sure that the Chinese peasant 25 centuries ago would not mind at all to be pitied a little bit by the aristocrat because he would avoid being beaten up and simply to be chided. I stop here.
All right, thank you, Kwang. Any other comment about Zhang? Otherwise, we will start to talk about Zixia. Nick, please.
Yeah, I just want to insert the footnote to what Kwang said. Yes, I would agree. Statistically, it's correct that most of the poor guys would rather survive, endure the bitterness or whatever. They might not be aware of whatever going on and getting a scrap of food or whatever to survive. But the point is, it's a big deal in the Chinese culture that this is articulated accurately, because there was a historical incident that during a disaster famine, one of the local aristocrats set up a charity soup kitchen, basically, giving out, food to the guys who were dying, and he habitually waved to one of the poor guys, say, "Hey, look, come here and eat the stuff I'm giving out." And that guy said, "Well, if that's the way you are giving out your soup, I'd rather die." And then that guy died, and this was recorded, and it became very important cases to be cited throughout the Chinese culture and the writing literature as a set phrase to represent the situations where maybe economically is beneficial, but it has an element of disrespect, then people wouldn't take the deal. That's very strong sentiment. So I just want to put that in.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, that's one of that. And just for reference, this story is accounted in the mentions. Okay, so 接来之死. So you say, hey, come here, and this guy died. We don't know if it's true or not true, but basically that's important influence. Let's put it this way, since mentions is a very, probably I would say more influential than Confucius, in this way. So anyway, okay, so I think that's probably we should not go further than the historical background about pity, not pity. I think let's keep on the level of understanding this text. Okay, so let's hear what Paul and Kwang. Okay. Kwang, you have hands up. Paul, please.
Thank you. This discussion took a turn that I'm interested in, which is it sort of suddenly became a thing about uneducated, sort of lower class peasants. But I didn't think it was that when we started talking about it. For instance, you could have a high ranking gentleman who was, I'll put it in your terms, incapable of worthiness. That's how you mean incapable.
And so, therefore pitiable.
And therefore pitiable. So when you apply pity, you could be applying it to a very high class person, and I just think we suddenly started talking about it differently. So I wanted to see if I'm on the right track about that.
Yeah, we're all right, but I just don't want the discussion go too far away from the original text. That's my in general. I know that's another interesting discussion. That's why, when Joe is here, we can extend for hours if you want to have a further discussion. But within this 2 hours, we want to focus on the text. And of course, you can go further about history background, but to a certain point, I have to put a stop sign here. Anyway, thank you. Kwang, please.
Yes, I would say that here it reminds a lot 17.1 and the last of book 17, okay? Because in 17.1 is about Yang Huo, precisely, a man of upper class having a bad behavior. And the last or the penultimate of the book 17, it was about people incapable of being good, but of lowly station. So it's clear that the epistemological development doesn't have anything to do with the social station. Once again, in Confucianism, it's not enough to be born. The other thing, he praises the good and takes pity on those who are not able to be good. Well, here the gentleman has to ask to himself, if he takes pity and not sympathizing to those who are not good enough, maybe he has to keep on his epistemological journey, but seeing where he is in reality, okay, because you cannot fake your inner reality, your inner being. If you truly take pity in the bad meaning of the word pity, but you see it, well, maybe it's the first step to go deeper into your epistemological journey. So one day you can truly sympathize and not pity those who cannot be good. I stop here.
Well, thank you very much for everybody about this. Right now, I'm thinking, I just try to think an idea. When I do this translation, probably I should take a different approach, okay? I think I should translate as instead of pity the incapable, I should translate as a proud in front of the incapable. Okay, that would be exactly the meaning. So
Put what?
You can take you are proud or you are showing off. You still deal with them, but you showing off your worthiness, your goodness in front of bad people. Let's say I'm very virtuous people and somebody doing bad thing. I don't have to pity this guy. I don't have to sympathize this guy. I just proud of in front of them. Doesn't mean I'm not going to deal with it. I'm proud in front of them. I think probably that's the original meaning. That's why the word "jin" has been used here. I don't know how everyone thinks about this. So that's just
maybe condescending.
Condescending, okay.
but we will start another long discussion, James.
I know that was a long discussion, but I just come with this thought, because when I remember when I work on this part, I've been spend a lot of long time contemplate this word. And then because I always translate this word as a negative, too proud, vainglory, okay. But here it probably means the same thing, probably means the same. Yeah.
But Jason, if I may,
has something wrong, so proud could be better.
Yeah, but if I may interrupt, you always say that you want to stick to the words of the text, okay? And Jing truly means to take pities or to sympathize with, which is the softer version of to take pity.
Okay.
And I would say that from the true philosophical understanding of this paragraph, once again, we cannot fake our inner being, okay? If we interact with someone that we judge incapable, and the spontaneous emotional answer in our inner being is Jing, meaning to take pity, or the nicer version would be to sympathize. I would say that it's simply the reality of our inner being at that moment, as it was the reality, if we trust the text, of the inner being of Zhang at that moment. It doesn't mean that we promote that kind of condescending attitude, but it means that the gentleman has to go deeper into his epistemological journey so that his spontaneous reaction in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years would be truly compassionate and not pity. But it takes time and it takes work on oneself.
All right. Anyway, thank you very much for this kind of discussion. And then let's move on. Chapter 4. Okay. Kwang, please. Yeah.
Okay, so translation by Professor Robert Eno of 19.4. Zixia said, though a Tao be minor, there is always something worth appreciating in it. But if one pursues it far, there is the fear of becoming bogged down. Therefore, the Junzi does not take it up.
Thank you, Kwang. Is Mark want to read it? Or...
Yes, chapter 4. Zixia said, even in inferior studies and employments, there is something worth being looked at. But if it be attempted to carry them out to what is remote, there is a danger of their proving inapplicable. Therefore, the superior man does not practice them.
Thank you, Mark. This one is a short one. Okay, chapter 4.
Book 19, Chapter 4. Zixia said, even in the minor Tao technique, there must be something worth learning. If one extends this too far, he might be bogged down. Therefore, a junzi does not do this.
Thank you, Amam. Legi's translation has something in danger, but I don't think they have the danger here. The Chinese the words use ni. Okay, that means stuck there. Okay, so I borrow. I think Dr. Eno did a good way to bog down. That means you got damping, all right, something that like you are trapped by something in the swamp or something. I think that's what it meant. And the xiao dao, the minor dao, here means some technique, right? So you can learn fixing the bicycle, okay, or growing the flower, okay, gardening. That also has its own dao, okay, but that's the minor dao. And the Zixia is talking about even that's worth learning, okay? And you can learn some dao here, but if you're doing too much, you could be bogged down here. So Junzi doesn't do this. Okay, so first you can see how his high-born nobility attitude here. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, this one reflects what Confucius taught in book 2. I think it's chapter 2, talking about a 君子 will not be a vessel. 君子不器. Okay, so you don't be in a vessel. Okay, so you have your own overall idea, the greater Tao, not the minor Tao, which is technique. So here, Amang, please.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to say a couple of very controversial things to address this chapter because I think they apply well. I once heard, if you ever believe the American public is stupid, turn on AM baseball radio and listen to somebody call in from the middle of nowhere and their acumen with baseball statistics. People are able to retain and spout and understand very complex statistics in huge numbers. What if this is taken too far? There's a meme going around that says, our political landscape is what happens when a generation is taught civics by high school coaches. This is what it means about taking that to minor knowledge, that minor skill, that minor doubt, and extending it too far, allowing it to prevail into places it does not belong. And Zisha finally ends by saying, a Junzi doesn't do this. I will acknowledge that what I just said can come across as a bit elitist, but this is also Zisha being a bit elitist. He's saying that there are technocrats, people of immense knowledge about either finite things or trivial things or things that may be of interest to them, but they then try and bring this skill set, this acumen in this one thing to the governing of our entire thing, which is how we societally get along and function. And he's saying it is the Junzi who should be in charge of doing that Dao, that greater Dao, and a Junzi doesn't do this, doesn't think that because they were, and now I'll go politically in a different direction, a high school football coach, they are qualified to hold an office. Not that I'm saying that the A equals B, but this is how this idea of a minor Dao being taken too far can be understood. Again, not trying to necessarily rankle anybody, but this advice I do think is still sound. However, it is also still elitist. We do need some better Junzi and not just people who learn their civics from their high school football coach.
Thank you, Amam. Let's have some brief discussion of Kwang and Paul, please.
So first, I want to say to Amon, don't be afraid to be elitist. On the contrary. And the other thing that I also want to say that here, Zixia is perfectly making the difference between the three domains of learning, okay? Learning information, learning know-how skills, can be a technical skill, technocratic skills, of course, and being. And if you don't have being, you can be an excellent expert in 1, 2, 3, even 5 domains, but it doesn't make you a Junzi. That being said, I want to give a modern example. In France, General Charles de Gaulle created l'ENA, l'École nationale d'administration publique, the National School for Public Administration, for making technocrats, but those technocrats are supposed to be subordinate to political men. In the last 30 to 40 years, I don't know how, those technocrats managed to take control of the political domain. And if you look at the situation of France right now, it is perfectly the illustration of what Zixia said. If you let people who are skillful in technocratic knowledge take control of the state will go down because they are not Junzi. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Paul, please.
Yeah, Kwan's points are all very valuable related to my question about understanding this, and also things Nick said before about the tendency to go towards the Chinese government, in the Chinese culture, to go toward government. So I'm hearing this implication that if you're going to go that route, that's the honorable route, at least in the culture that we're talking about, you study the higher aspects of the life and the upper trigram and not become a really good classical pianist even, you know. But what I'm getting at is the technocrat word applies to technology, which is different than the arts. And there you see where all the financial emphasis goes so that these people gain their power because they have the most money, just to put it very blatantly. So is that sort of at odds with this whole teaching? But those are the thoughts. I am relating it to the modern world, but I'm also relating it to what Nick said about where is that in the Chinese culture today?
So I'd like to address this a little bit by saying, first of all, the Chinese culture is not monolith, although it does come across that way in a lot of media. But I don't think the idea of the lofty ambition to work for government is nearly as prevalent as the security to work for government. That, I believe, is the stronger motivation for a lot of modern Chinese, and technocratic means are often the most direct route into doing that. So if you become a skilled accountant, you're more liable to be able to get that career or that job within a government institution that offers security. How that compares to sort of the lofty goals of steering the ship of state may pale in comparison. The other thing I want to say from a historical perspective, I agree with you that this is not a singular argument that is beyond reproach. I was merely giving a modern version of it. Miyamoto Musashi gives a counter argument to this when he states something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing badly, to know one art is to know all arts. And what he indicated there was what it takes to gain mastery over a single art is a set of skills and abilities that translate into every other field. This doesn't completely, conflict with Confucianism, because Confucius philosophy migrated into Japan. It informed Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy. But here, and I think Kwan will get at this, the character you have to develop to master an art is something about honing one's being, not just merely gaining skill over the form. And in that, I think Confucius and Miyamoto and Zisha here in his quote and Miyamoto are not entirely apart. That just gain, a hold of the form, some degree of competency with the form, but fail to gain the character it takes to become a master of a form, that'll get you into a government job. That'll get you into some position of security. But it's a minor Dao. It's a lesser way. And you didn't actually master it if you only took it for that ends. Whereas if you mastered it and truly mastered it, then you had to have actually gone the step further of character development. That could be translated into a Junsa's pursuit.
Thank you very much. And I think we have we are facing a big question here. Okay, so please just we are not going to resolve I think in Greek talking about techno and episteme. Okay, techno is kind of small Dao, and episteme is overall complete, comprehensive, objective knowledge. So I think that's the difference. The small Dao will lead to the complete knowledge, or which one better? I think that would be endless discussion. So please just focus on the understanding the text. And of course, we have no way to make sure, no way to say Zixia is always right. He could be wrong, okay? And again, I just pay attention on the text. Zixia is talking about, it might be, okay, the Chinese word is Kong, okay? It could be, it might happen, okay? Doesn't mean it will never happen. So a little bit, I think on the Zixia, okay? So we have here from Nick and Kwang. Then we probably have to move on. Okay, Nick, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to comment on Paul's question. It's interesting. It's the same guy who advised the two advisors. One, about the career path to the government, and then don't get too much into the little things. So same guy who give the advice. But leaving aside the utilitarian motivation, I think there's something deeper going on here. So just like the Greeks, Plato, Aristotle, who thought politics is the highest engagement that we could get ourselves into. For the Chinese, ancient like Zixia guy till today, there is I would still think a mainstream thinking that serving the state is above the other. Now, but the question is, can you serve the state other than being in the government? Can you influence the current affairs by being rich, powerful, whatever? The answer by the Chinese ancient thinking is no. Not that, it's not a statistical possibility, but the overall orientation is not to go, through the searching of wealth, the riches, and then influence the current affairs. So in that way, it has had a tremendous negative impact on the economic development of China through the ages because of this orientation. So end up the corrupted government kind of just monopolize all the resources in the society. So in that sense, it has its negatives. But in terms of the thinking 2,500 years ago, and even today, serve the state and then benefit the community is considered the right way to go. So the question is whether that kind of institutional setup can be self-sustaining, which has not been addressed effectively by the Confucianism school of thought.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Okay, Kwang, please.
Yes, I would like to come back to the idea of information, skill, and being, because I think all of you know the expression that the supreme musician breaks his instrument, okay? Because the supreme musician doesn't need anymore the sound of his instrument because his inner soul heard the cosmic music. So that is precisely the epistemological development that Zixia here is speaking in his own ways, okay? In the sense that I think that the meaningful line is, but if one pursues it far, that it is the minor Tao, there is the fear of becoming bogged down, okay? In the sense that if you are too much focused on the instrument technically, you would not go from the third line, meaning emotional balance and social sophistication, to the fourth line, which is the first step of the divine or the awareness kingdom. And here, you would be bogged down in the sense that you would not jump to the other reality of infinite awareness. And here, bogged down means that yes, you will accumulate a lot of information, you will accumulate a lot of skills, and maybe in many domains or in one domains, but you will be extremely skillful, but you would still be bogged down because you would not go into infinite awareness. And if I take the example of the musician, he would be bogged down and he would never be capable to break his physical instrument because he would never hear the cosmic sound, the cosmic music precisely. In Japanese, I give a last example. In Japanese, the art of the sword is called kendo. Okay, it's come from Chinese qian tao. Okay, qian is the Chinese for sword, ken in Japanese, and tao is the way of the sword, do in Japanese. So that tao of the sword is that you will start to have information and skills with the sword, but ultimately it has to bring you to being. And it's the same with any tao. But you would have to be capable not to be bogged down precisely and to see that minor art as one possible pathway to the way with a capital W or to the Tao. I stop here.
All right, thank you, Kwam. Okay, so let's move on for chapter 5. Then we'll finish on chapter 5. And next week we start from chapter 6. Okay, Kwam, please.
Okay, so translation by Professor Robert Eno, 19.5. Zixia said, a man who daily assesses what he has yet to understand and who month by month does not forget what he has mastered may be said to love learning.
Thank you, Kwam. Does Mark still want to read?
Yes, yes.
Okay, please.
Chapter 5, Book 19. Zixia said, he who from day to day recognizes what he has not yet, and from month to month does not forget what he has attained to, may be said indeed to love to learn.
Thank you, Mark. Aman, are you still there?
Yes,
Okay, please.
I'm here. Book 19, Chapter 5. Zixia said, from day to day, knowing what he has not learned, from month to month, forgetting not what he can do, he is, it can be said, eager to learn.
Thank you, Aman. Again, 好学, eager to learn. I think that's very important Confucius teaching. Okay, so you doesn't matter you smart or you are not that smart, you have enough knowledge or you don't have enough knowledge, you have eager to learn. And here is, I believe this one is also very well reflect Zixia's personality as carefulness. Don't preserve what he has, right? He talked about day to day, knowing what you has not learned, okay? It's just don't forget, okay? To learn, okay? And month to month, forget not, don't forget what he can do, what you have to learn. You have to make sure, you can put in practice. That's Zixia's teaching on this one. So that's chapter 5. Among, please.
In community college, every math teacher has to have an excuse why their students must learn math. And the best one I ever heard from a math instructor was that math is a vertical learning system. You have to build on the knowledge you had previously to do the next lessons. And her point was, I don't want the nurse that forgot everything from the first year of nursing school. I want them to know that, and I want them to be able to build on that. Zixia is advocating vertical learning here in a very concerted way. Math, I thought that was a great excuse and probably the best one I've ever heard from a math instructor, though there are other vertical learning models out there as well. They're just not as easy to test empirically. However, this is sound pedagogical advice. that you need to retain what you have learned month to month, and you need to know what the next logical vertical step is in learning. A person who can do this on their own is somebody who is eager to learn, somebody who realizes, okay, I have this knowledge set, I've retained it, these are the next steps I can use to build on it. This is the hallmark of somebody who is a voracious learner, and somebody any instructor, any professor, any teacher is happy to have in their class. Zisha may or may not have been this person himself, though it does sound like he very much was, but this was the student he wanted, much more than sort of the laissez-faire liberal arts student who didn't necessarily remember everything from the first year, but look at the amazing thing that they were able to produce now. Sounds more like a student to go to Zhejiang.
Thank you, Amam. Again, yeah, again, I also noticed Zixia is very much on the pedagogy. Okay, so a lot of thing is talking about the process of learning. I think that's another thing we can pay attention, especially for next week. We are going to, I believe next week, we are going to deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chapter about Zixia. So you will see how important of Zixia. And then I think Nick also mentioned about career path. Okay, that's another on chapter 13. That's another important influential teaching from Zixia about the career path. So Kwang, please.
Okay, so Zixia, I want to mention the fact that he was born in 507 BCE and he died in 400 BCE. So if we trust tradition, he died at 107 years old.
Just to interrupt you, I noticed a lot of young Confucius young disciples live like close to 100 years old. Zheng also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's another reason to learn Confucius.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But Zixia is a special one because if you remember, the Chun Chu, which is one of the 5 classics who has been edited by Confucius, had the 3 philosophical interpretation. The Guliang interpretation, which is more ritualistic interpretation. The Zuo Chuan, which is a more realpolitik and historical interpretation. And finally, the Gongyang Chuang, which is the high philosophical interpretation in which Confucius is not merely a teacher of philosophy, of rituals, but also perceived as a philosopher king. And that line of interpretation of the Chun Chu comes from the school created by Zixia. So the fact that Confucianism did not go down as a mere school of ritual, it's because of the universal history interpretation by Zixia in the Gongyang interpretation. Why does this interpretation bears the name of Gongyang and not of Zixia? Because one of his disciples was named Gongyang, and it was his descendant under the Western Han Dynasty who will put it in written form. And because of that written form, Tong Chong-su, who was a partisan or a promoter of the Gongyang interpretation, Tong Chong-su, a philosopher born in 179 BCE, 300 years after Confucius' death, and who died in 104 BCE, well, that Tong Chong-su was absolutely vital, essential to the creation of the Imperial Academy in 124 BCE, 12 years after 136 BCE, which was the year when Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty chose Confucianism as the imperial matrix. I'm sorry to have bombarded you with all these moments, but these moments are absolutely fundamental. because
thank you.
of this,
Yeah, go ahead. So sorry. Yeah.
because of Xia and because of his descendant, and because of his disciple Gong Yang, and because of the descendant of Gong Yang under the Western Han Dynasty, Dong Zhongshu contributed immensely to the creation of the Imperial Academy Taishui in 124 BCE. And that Imperial Academy was the physical framework having transmitted that idea of universal history to this day. And why I insist on that? Because in that idea of universal history is the ideological matrix for creating the Li Yi Chupang, okay, the main idea of Confucius in the political domain, the Li Yi Chupang, meaning the country or the civilization defined by music and rituals, meaning a civilized nation. And in the Gongyang interpretation of the Chunchu, there's one central concept that I want to mention, and I will finish with it. Is Da Yi Tong, and Da Yi Tong means the great union. But the great union of what? The great union of justice and power. Or if you want, the great union of the upper trigram and of the lower trigram. Once again, in ordinary words, it's the invitation of Confucianism to be wise, but also to be streetwise. And we come back again to the central idea of Confucianism, Hao Shui, eager to learn what? Information, skills, but on the top of that, being. Okay? So once again, the animal kingdom, skill, Confucianism is not rejecting skill or the animal kingdom, and the awareness kingdom, the upper trigram, Da Yi Tong, the union of justice and power, or the union of the upper trigram and of the lower trigram. It's not for nothing that on 25 chapters, Zhixia has 11 chapters of book 19. He left his mark in a absolutely Leviathan-esque manner. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Paul, please.
Yeah, thanks. I love your historical references. But the comment I have is about the pedagogical nature of this meaning. I love the emphasis on doing, and it reminds me of a thing that I learned about in the nursing profession, even though I'm not a nurse, years ago. This motto, see one, do one, teach one. That's what learning is. So this is the see one and the do one. Like, that's part of learning, is doing the thing that you've been taught. But then there's the teach one, which Aman will like, meaning the ultimate model being then transmit it to someone else. So my question is that included in this eager to learn concept? I don't see it in this passage, but in general.
I wouldn't say it's explicit, but Zisha is now the teacher.
Right now, they all teach on this young disciple. First, three things I think we need to remember. First, they all much younger, like 30, 40 years younger than Confucius. Second, they have their own school. They may not agree among each other. Number three is the most important. They all live very long, okay, the longevity. They achieve longevity. That's encouraging for us to learn Confucius. Okay.
Yeah. And if I may interrupt, for a guy who promoted the idea of the union of justice and power, I would say that he left a pedagogical program that would last for thousands of years.
Are you talking about chapter 13 about yes?
No, I'm talking about the Gongyang interpretation of the Chunqiu.
Thank you for the information. So correct me if I'm wrong, Kwang. So I think the Gongyang basically contributed by Zixia because his Gongyang is his disciple. So he
Absolutely.
yeah. So rituals, the Book of Rites, is from the Xunzi because his disciple doing a lot of work to edit the Book of Rituals. I think that's the situation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Guliang, the book of ritual, but it's not the main legacy of Zixia. The main legacy of Zixia is truly the Gongyang Zhuang,
Oh yeah.
because and the other one, the Zuo Chuan, is the historical and realpolitik interpretation. And I think that the three are important. But what is important in the philosophical program of Confucius, the legacy or the hope of Confucius is Li Yi Chupang. And to have that Li Yi Chupang, you need to create a long lineage of Junzi, or I translate in English as aristocratic man. So that long lineage of aristocratic man, of course, will be created thanks to the four books which focus on the epistemological growth, but they have a political program that is projected far into the future, because I guarantee you that the ideal of the union of justice and power will not be achieved very soon. So that is the program of the Confucianist school, which started with Confucius, that has been given a strong imperial matrix in 124 BCE because of the creation of the Tai Sui of the Imperial Academy, and which is still in action nowadays. And I don't know when that will be achieved, but the union of justice and power, that is the ideal of the Confucianist school.
All right. Thank you, Kwang, and thank you, everyone. I need to go and say next week we will start from book 19, chapter 6. And Kwang, thank you again for and Mark.
My pleasure.
And Paul and Nick and everyone. Thank you for asking a lot of challenging questions. And then we start to have a lot of meaningful discussion. Thank you, everyone. Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Ciao.
Happy Moon Festival.